Well, actually, before I start, the first thing I want to say is I hope I get to write my own tombstone, because that was, Mike read a lot of stuff too much. The main thing I would like to say is that I'm happy to be here on behalf of Americans United for Life. For those of you that know us, we used to be in Chicago, although we were founded in Washington. We've gotten a number of grants, and we've moved our headquarters to Washington. And we have established a national and international project. But what AUL did for years and years and years was particularly work in the states and develop model laws in the states. There is a form at the table over here. If any of you want to sign up to get various things we send around on updates and stuff like that, we'd be happy to add you to the list. I do work in D.C., with Richard and Marie and Mike and Chuck Donovan, who'll speak tomorrow, and other people on conscience issues. And I want to take just a moment to thank Christus Medicus, the Detroit Guild of the Catholic Medical Association, and One More Soul for putting this conference on. And I'm thrilled that there are people from 16 different states. Because as Marie was saying, we're not at the end of the world, but it's a crisis moment. Conscience is severely at threat all across the country. In the federal laws, as Richard talked about and Marie talked about, I'm not going to talk about the federal laws, but also in the states. Of course, you as good Americans, and as you remember from your civics classes, if the fact that the federal government doesn't enter an area doesn't mean there's no law in that area. It means the law is determined by the states. So we need to be, I think, aggressive in the states to protect conscience rights. If we can do it at the federal level, great. But if we can't, if we can at least get neutrality at the federal level, and we can protect them in the states. So I'll start with the quote Richard ended with. Again, Thomas Jefferson. The importance of rights to conscience in our nation's history is really indisputed. Either people who dispute it, I think, act from ignorance or malice, because it's always been an important, understood right in the United States. Now, this is to give you an idea of what our enemy, or I'm a DC guy, so I may talk, maybe I shouldn't say enemies. Our people on the other side say, American Civil Liberties Union, 2002, although reproductive advocates could still work to improve conscientious objections, their goal should be to get rid of them. Okay? So there are organizations whose outlook and activities are directed to eliminating conscientious objection. As Mike mentioned, I do a lot of international work, and just to give you a comparison, in the Council of the Parliament of the Council of Europe, there was a resolution that went forward in the fall with the idea of saying that any time there is a legal medical procedure, it must be performed. So what those who favor elimination of our conscience rights believe is that any time a procedure is legal, medical personnel should be required to perform it, it should be paid for, etc., etc. So they think if legal, must be performed. No real conscientious objection. Now, I'm also going to just take a minute and run through, let you see some of these cases Marie was mentioning of what has happened in some of the states. She mentioned this near the end of her talk. California, New York, Catholic Charities having to offer artificial contraception. She mentioned this case too, the physicians being sued by the lesbian couple who did not want to perform artificial insemination. Okay, ambulance driver being fired for refusing to take a woman to an abortion clinic. In New Mexico, refused to approve community-owned hospital lease because of the refusal to perform elective abortion. Private hospital being sued because the doctor gave medical care to an infant. The Board of Pharmacy in the state of Washington requiring pharmacists to dispense. In Illinois, the governor's action requiring pharmacists to dispense. Now, so those are just some of the cases. The way AUL or part of our response to the threats to conscience is we've developed a model conscience bill. I'll take you through this bill. I think Mike has either given it to you or will give it to you later. And I think in some of it's in the blue folder. So, I believe it's in this folder. So, this is a model bill which we would like states to pass. Now, some states need it. Some states have pretty good conscience protection. I'm going to go through certain provisions, but just take a look at this C here, which is definitional. What we tried to do was to sweep in here all the issues that where conscience is being threatened. So it is including, now this is, I can see somebody objecting that some of these things are in healthcare services. Well, as a lawyer, in a certain sense, in an existential sense, it doesn't matter. If they're defined in the law as healthcare services, then certain consequences follow. So such healthcare services include abortion, artificial birth control, blah, 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 human cloning, euthanasia. So we're trying to cover everything, not just kind of classical, perhaps healthcare areas where you would think we need conscience protection. But all these areas we're going to need conscience protection. So this is a comprehensive bill that seeks to give conscience protection on the state law level across all areas. And welcome to Mississippi. They did pass this. They have passed the comprehensive bill as written. And there is another state that has done so. Now let me take you through some of the provisions. Healthcare service. This is broadly defined. And note the words, but not limited to. So again, as a lawyer, as a drafter, listing of these things does not limit that others could be included. And that's important because a lot of courts try to narrowly construe provisions that protect conscience. But you can see, you can read for yourself, it covers a wide range of activities. Then, what does it mean to participate in a healthcare service? Counsel, advise, provide, perform, assist, refer, admit for purposes of providing or participate in providing. So very broad definition of participate. So broadly define what participation in healthcare service means. And now who is protected by the bill? Providers, institutions, and payers. So, healthcare provider, again, very broadly defined. Oops, But you can see physician, etc., pharmacist, researcher, social worker, you can read it for yourself, but it's a very broad definition. They're protected under the model law. Healthcare institutions are protected under the model law, and you can see that's very broadly defined as well. And healthcare payer, any entity or employer that contracts for, etc., any healthcare service or product, including, again, but not limited to, health maintenance organizations. So healthcare service, we're protecting rights of conscience to participate, broadly defined, in a healthcare service, and we're protecting providers, institutions, payers, institutions, very broadly defined as well. So that's been passed in Mississippi as whole. Now, although we think that conscience is important, not everybody else does. Now, this is how the model bill defines conscience. Whoops. You can read that for yourself. But it's broad. Religious, moral, or ethical principles held by a healthcare provider, institution, or payer. Very broad. Now, I know that Richard mentioned the ACOG opinion, and Marie may have also. The ACOG opinion saying that basically rights of conscience have to yield to, particularly to requests for abortion. Well, this is how, number C at the top of this page is how the model bill defines discrimination. And the point of this slide is that what ACOG is up to here would be discrimination under the model bill. You can see what discrimination includes: termination, transfer, refusal, staff privileges, etc. Now, this is going on with the ACOG opinion. You can read through some of that language if you'd like to, but basically ACOG's point of view is that conscience must yield to the provision of these services. It's a lot like what I was telling you about in Europe. If these services are legal, they must be provided, and the right to conscience must yield. Also, here's the woman who's been mentioned previously, Nurse DiCarlo. I think Richard and Marie both mentioned her. So Section 7 of our model bill would help her. The problem in her case is that the Second Circuit refused to imply a private cause of action. And that's kind of legal speak. But what it means is that she can't go to court, even though she was forced to participate in an abortion. She can't go to court and say, well, if you look at whatever, the Church Amendment or the Hyde-Weldon or whatever, I have the right not to be forced to participate. No, the court would not imply that right because the statute didn't say she had that right. So you see what I'm saying? It was not expressed. It is not expressed in the federal law. So anyway, our state, and she is also suing in New York in state court. I don't know what she has much chance there. At the federal level, her remedies are left to HHS to investigate, the Department of Health and Human Services, to investigate and to take action. And they have had a meeting with her recently. There's some skepticism among some people that they won't be very aggressive about it because of the views of the president and his administration. But anyway, the point of the model bill is to give various remedies so that if your conscience rights are violated under state law, you can sue, you can get damages, you can get injunctive relief. So again, I mean, you know, Nurse DiCarlo may be able to prevail in New York, although it seems, I mean, I don't know, but It seems unlikely. But if you passed the model bill and she was in your state, she could sue. And even if HHS wasn't going to do anything to help her, she would have a right to go to court herself. On the very first slide, I think it showed that AUL has something called Defending Life. And it's a book that we put out about every year. Now it's about every other year. And it's about this thick, and it is covers end of life, beginning of life, including bioethics issues, and conscience. And it surveys the current situation in the law. It also has essays about these different issues, and it has model bills on all kinds of aspects of these issues. And the point is, whatever state you are from, and we've got 16 states here, you can at least, if you want to look at somebody else's idea of a possible bill, you can go to our webpage, which is aul.org, and you can download our model bills. You can download a particular area. I mean, like I said, the book is divided into 4 parts, really: abortion, bioethics, end of life, and conscience. And you can, we have report cards on each state. We look at each state in the union, and we judge them on life issues. We have a criteria, what kind of bills have they passed. Now, all of us, I don't want to be simplistic. We all know that passing a bill is one thing. The important thing is really to enforce that bill. In Philadelphia, they had laws that would have stopped Gosnell from doing some of the things he did. They weren't enforced. But you got to have the laws to enforce. And so our model bills are to give you possibilities. So on rights of conscience, this is at least our evaluation of the situation. 3 states have no protection for rights of conscience for health care providers, which is Alabama. That's a surprise, I would think, to most people. New Hampshire and Vermont. Alabama is actually considering a bill to protect conscience right now. State sessions are not like Congress. Congress is never out of session, it seems like. And, they might take a week's break, but they're back. And they're always around. They're always either doing good or creating mischief, depending on your point of view. In the states, a lot of states meet for 4 or 5 months, 6 months. Some of them only meet every other year. So the legislative window is a lot smaller in the states. But there is a bill up in Alabama to protect conscience, and they're still in session, so maybe that'll happen. And then you can see there's various kinds of protection. Mississippi and Louisiana protect conscience. And then there's a lot of states that protect some aspect of conscience. In the kind of old days, I think a lot of people realized the importance, or particularly after Roe v. Wade, it was clear we needed to protect conscience in the abortion context. And so a lot of state conscience laws that were passed do that. But we've since realized how much conscience is under assault in all these other areas, not just abortion. So some of these states, although they have some protections, they don't have complete comprehensive protection like in the model bill. And let me just say, the model bill is a model, which means it's not perfect, but it's as perfect as we could make it. When you get in a state legislature, there's, the reality of politics is trading, horse trading, deciding this, deciding that, taking something out, whatever. So the suggestion I'm making is, if you could pass the model bill, great. But if you can't, and you can pass some aspect of the model bill to protect conscience, great. Or if you're in one of these 45 states that have some protection, maybe you can expand it a little bit. Idaho. Idaho passed the provider part of our conscience bill, not covering payers, but covering providers. Now that's good news, but what happened immediately afterwards. The pro-assisted suicide people, because you remember in the model bill, we put assisted suicide in the services, quote, services, as to which you have conscience rights not to participate. The pro-euthanasia people are trying to change the Idaho law to make an exception for that. Because although they're trying to legalize assisted suicide in Idaho, which they had an effort that failed earlier this year, but they'll keep trying. And they want to make sure there's no conscience protection for it. So, I mean, I think you need to really, I mean, you know it, you're medical people, you know it better than I as a lawyer in Washington. But the people we are against, or who are opposing us, are really ruthless. They want certain procedures to be legal, and then they want to force us to participate. It's not a, kind of a struggle or a game where we can play nice. The other side wants to force you, your hospitals, your doctors, your nurses, want to force you to participate in these things. And if you don't want to do it, their answer is don't go to medical school. Don't go to nursing school. Don't run a hospital. So, I mean, it is a very, very, I think, vicious attack against Catholic health care, but also any conscience-based health care. And you need to really get a hold of that. They want to legalize it, and they want to force you to give up your conscience rights. We also have a little model bill on pharmacists, because the problems pharmacists are having has really come to the forefront over the last few years, as you probably all know. Pharmacists are covered in our model bill, but we have a breakout little one on pharmacists in case, well, if you're in a state that for some reason you cover doctors and nurses and hospitals, but you don't do pharmacists. So that's also on our webpage. Now, I will also say to anybody that we had a little glitch doing this, because my zip drive didn't work and all that. So if you go on our webpage and you can't find these model bills or something, all you got to do is email me, which is my name, William.Saunders, Saunders at AUL.org, and we'll get it. We'll get it for you. We'll help you. If you have trouble with web pages like I do sometimes. This is the pharmacist map. We have maps on each state too. So on the United States on each issue. So if you get a copy of Defending Life, it gives you kind of a visual to help you see how the battle's going. Thank you very much.